All right. Will you please confirm that I have the right to share the screen? Do I have the right to share my screen?
Definitely, ma'am. You have the right to share your screen, ma'am.
Okay, so I'll just go ahead and share my screen. Please confirm that you can see my screen. Will you please confirm that I have the right to share the screen?
Yes, you can see your screen, ma'am.
Okay, that's very beautiful. All right, so like I stated, thank you so much once again, Walu, for this opportunity to share knowledge with colleagues and senior colleagues, and of course, mentees and mentors. It's a privilege. Thank you so much. And if you're familiar with me, you know that I love that my class is usually very interactive so that we can all talk and we can all rub minds together. So what I'm going to be discussing today, like I said, it's a topic that it's become a trending topic, and it's now in the front burner. Everyone is talking about sustainability. And I believe, like, it was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, Wali also discussed with one of the speakers or facilitators regarding sustainability. And I said that this topic we are going to look at today is one of the critical elements to sustainability. So in other words, if you're talking sustainability, this is one of the key aspects that we need to look at, because this is one of the pillars, one of the 3 or 4 pillars that we have for sustainability. This is one of the pillars when it comes to sustainability. In as much as ISO implementation is not a mandatory requirement, you can see that the markets and the world at large is making it to become a mandatory requirement. In other words, the pressure is mounting, and as the pressure is mounting, there's a demand on individuals, on businesses, on enterprises, on multinationals to begin to reposition themselves, realign their business processes, strategize or re-strategize on how they can leverage on the current trend and be able to access funds and access resources. And in fact, I even love the pressure that is mounting. The pressure that is mounting only goes to show that, look, if you are not going to align at the long run, you might probably be seeing yourself going out of business, or as an individual professional, you could probably be seeing yourself going out of relevance in your field if you do not align with the current trend that is happening right now. So yes, this is what I want us to share. So at the end of the day, or at the end of our conversation, hopefully we'll be able to have a broad overview of ISO and what it stands for. I know a lot of us already understand what ISO is, the concept and the benefit of ISO 14001, 2015, particularly, what are the requirements of this standard? Talking about ISO 9000, ISO 14001, 2015. And of course, in the course of our conversation, we are going to be coming across some critical concept or critical terminologies that we need to also discuss, as it were. Okay, so this is our learning objective, and then hopefully at the end of today, we would have been able to do justice. Okay, so before I progress by way of trying to introduce the subject proper, if you know me, you know I love to do this a lot. Can we put it in the chat? Can we put it in the chat on a scale of 1 to 10? What is your knowledge regarding the environmental management system? I know that the ISO 9001 2015 is one of the commonest ISO standard, and a lot of professionals, particularly in occupational health and safety, would have gone through this training one way or the other, including the 45001. On a scale of 1 to 10, just let me know what's our level of understanding. Don't be too modest. All right, just put it in a chat on a scale of 1 to 10. What is your level of knowledge? What's your level of understanding when it comes to the understanding the requirement of ISO 14001 2015 standard? Please talk to me. Can we just put it on the chat on a scale of 1 to 10? 5. Amos said 5. Charles said 5. Oh, Mohammed said 4. I said, don't be too modest. Chideme said 4. Oh, Christopher said 8. So Christopher, I'm going to be lecturing with you. We're going to be talking together. Akim Mukhtar said 4. Okay, I see Tolu Lopez said 4. Timothy Sunday said 2. Wow, love that. Okay. Yes, so Christopher, so put on your hat. We are going to be on this driver's seat together, right? Silvano said 4. Bethel said 3. Okay, so yes, so we are all here to learn together, right? We are all here to learn. So that means that at the end of today, we would all be able to, be able to take away a lot. Now, what is ISO? I'm sure a lot of us have heard about ISO. Can we just put in the chat if possible? If possible, can we just put in the chat? What does ISO stand for? Do you want to put in the chats? I love my class to be interactive. I love it. Oh, Engineer Tuko Lawal, good to have you here. Well done, sir. Thank you. So just quickly on the charts, please put it on the charts. What is ISO? International Organization for Standardization. International Organization for Standardization. Okay, I get that. I just wanted to dispel that so that we can all be on the same page. International Standards Organization. Lushola Kitade, are you sure about that? And that is why this learning is very important. ISO is actually not a word. It's not an acronym. It's actually a word, and it was derived from Greek word, which means isos, and isos means equal. So ISO actually, it's a word that is derived from the correct connotation is International Organization for Standardization. Ismaili said ISO stands for International Organization for Standardization. Yes, it is an independent, non-governmental organization, and it is a voluntary standard that is recognized globally. Thank you for that. It's a voluntary standard. It is a standard that is globally recognized, and we have technical committees, we call them TCs, that develop standards on behalf of ISO. We have technical committee members, they develop standards for ISO. So the technical committee members that develop this particular ISO standard we are looking at is the TC 207. That's just a way of information. So ISO stands for the International Organization for Standardization. So you should just learn that. That's just by the way. Now the historic background of ISO 14001 2015. 2015 usually is the year. Anytime you see, okay, before we got to 2015, we had the ISO 14001 2004. So basically the years of the last revision or the year of the last update of the standard is usually the last year that you will see that is attached to the ISO standard. So the 14,000 series are the environmental management systems. The 14,000 series are the environmental management system. And of course, it started as a British standard 7750 that was focused majorly on the as a result of the Rio de Janeiro Declaration after 1992, the environmental summit that was held, right? Thereafter, there had been a lot of revisions and then updates. And the current standard we have today, as I speak with you, is the ISO 14001 2015. That's ISO update is the last revision. And as I currently speak with you right now, the ISO standard is actually undergoing some updates. The 9001 had undergone some updates in 2021, 2021, but there was no really major changes. And that's why you are still seeing that the standard has remained unchanged.
See people
So,
in the space. You know, we've been building for months, and so now it's so to welcome people into the house today. Let's hang.
All right, please can we all remain muted? Thank you. Okay, so this is the historic background of this standard that we are all going to be looking at. Like I stated, this is the evolution of the standard, and currently we are with the ISO 14001 2015. That's the environmental management system that contains the requirements. Okay, Now, there is what we call the high-level structure in ISO. I think about 5 years ago or 6, 7 years ago, thereabouts, the board of the ISO is an organization, because ISO is an international organization that develops standard that is globally recognized. ISO has membership across over almost 190 countries of the world. And these 90 countries of the world, they come together as a consensus to agree on a common standard that will be globally recognized. And each countries of the world, they have representations at ISO meetings. Okay. And like I said earlier, we have technical committees, and the technical committees, they develop the ISO standards. Okay. Now, sometime back, like 5 years, 6 years back, thereabouts, from all the ISO standards from 2015 till date, they all follow this high-level structure. This is called a high-level structure. The board of ISO came up with a structure, and it is called Annex XL. Annex XL, that's structure level, high-level structure level. It means that any committee or any technical community that want to develop standard, compulsorily they had to follow this structure level. That means +1 for any standard from 2015 till date will be scope, +2 will be normative references, +3 will be terms and definitions, +4 will context of the organization. So in other words, if you pick up ISO 45001 2018, and you pick up ISO 9001 2015, and you pick up ISO 14001 2015, what we are discussing currently, and the other standard that were developed from 2015, you would definitely see that they all have this common structure level. That means the chapter or the clauses, as we commonly say, will be uniform across board. Of course, some of the sub-clauses may differ because the standard addresses different scope. However, you will see clause 5 will be leadership, clause 6 will be planning, 7 support, 8 operations, 9 performance evaluation, and of course 10 will be improvement. So this is just a way of giving an overview, and this is one of the reasons why Annex SL was designed, is for standardization, to have a common language across all the standard, to be consistent and incompatibility, and particularly for integration of the management system. Because sometimes when you notice that you want to integrate several standards across different organizations, it becomes a little bit difficult to integrate the standard. But having a common structure level, it becomes easier to integrate the standard across different levels. Okay, I will rush now. So this is the arrangement of the Annex XL. If you can see my screen. Okay, so this is just giving you an overview of ISO and ISO 14001. And as I speak to you today, we have over 22,000 ISO standards, over 22,000 ISO standards. But the very common ones that we all encounter usually are the quality management system, the ISO 9001 2015, the environmental management system, that is the 14,001 2015, the OHSMS management system, which is very common to our industry, which is the ISO 45001 2018. You have the energy management system, the ISO 51000. You have the food safety management system, the ISO 22000. You have the information security management system, ISO 27000, and different ISO standards that you have across different levels. You have the 31000 that has to do with risk management system. You have the 22301 that has to do with business continuity management system, and so on. So you have different ISO standards across board, across different organizations. But the commonest of the ISO standards is a quality management system, because quality cuts across all the organization. And of course, you have the food safety management system that is industry specific, information security management system that is industry specific. And then of course, environment is becoming common right now, just because sustainability, like I said, is becoming a hot a hot trending topic, and everybody is beginning to look at environmental management system as one of the key pillars to achieve sustainability. Now, let's look at the overview of the ISO 14001 2015. That's actually a high level overview. Now, for any organization that desires to reposition itself, like I said, and to become strategically relevant, then the organization must, as a necessity, even as individuals, really, you want to reposition yourself as a professional, as an organization, as an enterprise, as a multinational, then you need to begin to look strategically at how you navigate through your management system. So it's for you to decide to do ISO 14001 2015 definitely has to be a strategic decision. And if you do not want to, the current trends and practices globally would actually make you to become, strategic when it comes to your environmental management. The pressure is mounting, and trust me, the pressure is not going to reduce, because World Bank and IFC, International Financial Corporation, and other such global organizations that would release multi-billion naira projects would compulsorily make it compulsory and compulsorily mandate that organizations begin to look at how they sustainably navigate through projects. So if this had become one of the mandatory requirements, you will agree with me that you do not have any choice other than for you as an individual, as a professional, or even as an organization to begin to look at how you can reposition your processes and your activities to begin to protect the environment. So the overview of the environmental management system really is protection of the environment, preventing or mitigating adverse environmental impact. And we're going to come to what environmental impact is: mitigating potential adverse effects of the activities of the organization on the environment. You will agree with me that as you navigate through your activities every day, your activities interact with the environment. As you interact with the environment, the releases to the environment, they have potential to affect the environment either positively or negatively. But of course, it is a negative or significant impact to the environment that we are looking at, assisting the organization in fulfilling requirements or ensuring that you meet legal obligations when you actually implement the environmental management system. It also helps you to achieve financial and operational benefits. Now, right now, if you want to get financial assistance from global corporations, it is now becoming mandatory for you to have environmentally sound initiative that strengthens the organization and reposition it for the global market, even for the local and both global market. It helps you to prevent your environmental impact, like I said, from being unintentionally shifted elsewhere within the life cycle of your environmental management system. Communicating environmental information to your relevant interested parties. That's one of the things that your management system will make you do. You are able to control or direct or influence the way you manage your environment, the way what you consume, how you dispose, and using this 360-degree life cycle management. The management of our environmental resource or environmental waste is no longer from cradle to grave. Right now, the concept now is from cradle to cradle. So instead of disposing, the next question you want to ask yourself is, how do I navigate through such that it's not going from cradle to grave? Grave means final disposal to the environment that is impacting the environment, but rather the advocate globally right now is from cradle to cradle. That means that thing you consider waste that you want to dispose, it could actually serve as a raw material for another aspect of your operation, or raw material for another organization entirely that is not within your management, that's not within your industry. Now, still looking at the overview of the environmental management system. So we say that achieving environmental a management system or implementing an effective environmental management system is actually one of the critical steps in achieving environmental sustainability. And I started my opening statement by saying that the word sustainability had become a hot trending topic globally. And as an organization or as an individual, you must reposition yourself. And because of time, of course, I don't want us to begin to define what sustainability, but in a broad sense, we say that sustainability basically means achieving that balance between the environment, society, and the economy such that we are able to use the current resources of the environment without compromising the ability of the future generation to also be able to use the same resources that we have enjoyed, so that they are able to also meet their own needs. That's a very simple definition. And I know that a lot of people on this call, you already know that definition. So the entire objective of implementing ISO 14001-2015 is achieving that balance. We say there are three key pillars. In fact, right now, it's actually 4 pillars. It used to be 3 key pillars that focuses on social sustainability, environmental sustainability, and economic sustainability. There's a 4th one now that has to do with human sustainability. So sustainability goals are all about achieving balance in how you navigate through your activities and how you consume or use the resources that is available to you as an organization or even as individual and as a professional. So like global trends and expectation is for sustainable development to be transparent, and for that to be accountability. So recently I completed a course on World Bank site on international financial cooperation. We were talking about the AIDS performance standard for the international financial cooperation. Very interesting course. And I will also encourage us to, I will also encourage us to go through that course if we have a way. If you like, if you can, I will encourage all of us to go through that course. It's a very, very interesting course. And the course actually focuses on, having some critical elements or performance standards that organization must meet in order for them to be able to access some loans or some funds. And if you look at these critical standards, or there are 8 of them, if you look at them, number 1 is talking about assessment and management of environmental and social risk and impact. Number 2 of it is talking about labor and working condition. Number 3 is talking about effective resource management and pollution prevention. And we have I think number 4 is talking about community health, safety, and security. We have the number 5 is talking about land acquisition and involuntary settlement. Number 6 is talking about biodiversity, conservation, sustainable management of natural resources. You have 7 is talking about, of course, indigenous people and their cultural heritage. Now, if you look at this, why am I showing this? I'm showing this just to let you know that environmental management system or environmental resource management, there are some critical aspects of the performance standard that is monitored by the ISC or the World Bank. So if any organization is embarking on a multi-billion-dollar project or whatever project you're embarking upon, and you want to access some funds or some loans, these are some of the mandatory standards, performance standards, or metrics that your organization will be monitored against. And you can see that almost how many of them now, about 3 or 4 of them are focused on environment. Risk management is talking about assessment and management of environmental and social risk, number 1. Number 3 is talking about efficient resource management and pollution prevention. Number 4 is talking about land acquisition and how land is used. Number 6 is talking about biodiversity conservation, sustainable management of natural resources. You will agree with me that all of these are critical elements of an efficient environmental management system. So in other words, having a knowledge of the ISO 41000 2015 will position you actually as a professional and begin to align you to become more relevant. So having this overview, it's something that I feel is very good, and I think is something I will encourage us to dive right into it and learn more about this standard. I saw this quote and I got really very interested in it. It said, I don't want to protect the environment, but we want to create a world where the environment does not need protecting. In other words, we need to be able to create a world where we are able to manage resources efficiently in a sustainable way, such that the environment will not need to fight back and the environment will not need to, react back in a bad way. We want to create a world that is so clean and so sustainable by focusing on how we manage environmental resources and our activities, such that the environment is not revolting. And that basically means that we are minimizing harmful effects on the environment, maximizing the use of natural resources, minimizing how we generate waste to be able to conform to applicable legal requirements, and of course, achieve continual improvement. So these are just general overview. Now let's dive right into, okay, let's quickly look at the benefits. Like I said, there are so many benefits. And one of the key benefits for me actually is achieving overall sustainability, sustainable development, ability for us to be able to use the environmental resources and still leave room for the future generation to enjoy the same level of resources that we have enjoyed, by improving whatever, by ensuring that we manage the environmental resources efficiently and are complying with applicable legal requirements, and of course optimizing environmental resources and minimizing waste. All right. Okay. So let's look at the clauses. I think this is a summary of what we have been talking about. Now let's come to what we want to discuss today. Let's look at the clauses. And the clauses also follow the PDCA concept. The ISO standard follows the plan, do, check, and act concepts. And it's basically saying that for you to say that you want to establish an environmental management system, one of the things that you need to do definitely is to plan. And what does planning mean? To define what to do and how it should be done. And that is actually under clause 8 of the ISO 14001 2015 standard. That has to do with operational planning. And of course, clause 6, planning. Establishing environmental objectives, defining who does what, and defining policies and procedures on how it should be done in accordance with your own environmental policies, statutory regulatory requirements, and of course, other statutory regulatory requirements that have been established through contractual agreements with your clients. So planning basically means, what do we do and how best can we do it? What are the objectives we want to achieve and how do we achieve those objectives? Then do, of course, do means implement those things we say we want to do. Because one thing as a consultant I notice is that sometimes our policies and procedures and documents that we have established do not speak to our actual activities. So we have the documents in place, robust documents, well written and documented in one hand. On the other hand, what we do is completely contrary to what we say we would do. Then one of the models or one of the concepts of the PDCA is also check, which means monitor what you say you will do. So there must be performance metrics to check whether you have actually achieved those policies and environmental objectives, goals, or commitment that you have made regarding your environmental performance metrics. So there are some yardstick, like I said, objectives that you set for yourself, some goals that you set for yourself as a result of your environmental aspect. I'll come to that. Then the check-in periodically, it could be quarterly, it could be monthly, it could be depending on the criticality of that activity and the performance metrics you are defined for yourself. You need to check periodically. Then, of course, you act, assuming that your checking reveals that you are below your expectation. Then, of course, you take action. That's where the standard says talks about non-conformities and corrective action. However, if you are performing at par and you are performing according to expectation, you do what we call continual improvement, because that's actually largest room in the world as we continue to improve, we navigate through continual improvement of our processes. Okay, another, aside from the PDCA, another critical element of the environmental management system is also risk. This new standard talks about risk, environmental risk management. We come to that under clause 6. I'll quickly look at that. Okay, so now let's look at clause 6 of the standard. Now we have 10 clauses, like I've said. We have 10 clauses. Clauses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. However, clauses 1, 2, 3, they are called introductory clauses. The scope, the normative references of the ISO standard, the terms and definitions, they are called introductory standards. Most of the time, organizations are not audited against clauses 1, 2, 3 because they are introductory clauses. So the scope basically talks about the overview of the standard, what the standard is all about, what the standard entails, what is the objective of the standard, why the establishment of the ISO 14001-2015. So the scope basically talks about the overview of the standard. Then, of course, clause 2, normative references, speaks to all the references that were made when the standard was being designed, when it was being developed. Then, of course, you have clause 3 that talks about terms and definition. Then the key requirement of the ISO standard, like I said, starts from clause 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that is why in ISO, we say that we have 10 clauses, but we have 7 main clauses. There are 7 main clauses in the ISO standard. And these 7 main clauses are the clauses that really the organization would be audited against, or your performance evaluation will be based on these clauses. So these are the clauses that we are going to be looking at right now. We have the clauses 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So let's quickly look at them one after the other, and then we'll begin to close gradually. Okay, so we have the clause 4 of the ISO standard. And clause 4 of the ISO standard starts with the context. So for you to be able to demonstrate that your organization is actually implementing ISO 14001-2015, one of the key things that the standard requires is that organization must establish what we call context of the organization. You will agree with me that if you're operating within the construction industry and another person is operating within the, let's say, engineering or manufacturing or oil and gas or even service industry or financial industry, you will agree with me that your environmental conditions or the conditions affecting you regarding environment, or the releases or what you release to the environment in terms of solid waste or gaseous, they would not be the same thing. And so the standard is saying that the first thing that you need to do is to determine your organizational context. And in determining your organizational context, the standard speaks to what we call the internal and external issues. Those challenges, those things that can impact your organization or affect your ability to achieve your intended outcome regarding environmental management. So what are those environmental conditions that can affect you or affect your capability to actually perform optimally regarding how you manage the environment and environmental resources? So he said you must identify those elements, and they call them both internal and external issues. And those elements are different from industry to industry. So for construction industry, you're going to be looking at things that has to do with pollution regarding maybe issues regarding how they probably interact with water bodies around, how they interact with maybe cutting of trees around in terms of the construction and all of that. So when it comes to manufacturing industry, you want to be looking at the releases to the water bodies, you want to look at the solid waste, or you want to even look at the gaseous substances that they release to the environment. So you want to look at all those challenges or all those environmental conditions regarding your particular industry. 4.2 is talking about the relevant interested parties. So that means basically it's talking about that there are some interested parties or key stakeholders, let me use the word, that these issues will affect. And we need to understand who they are, what are their needs and expectations, and how you want to meet these needs and expectations, and in terms of ensuring that, number one, you determine who they are, understand their needs and expectations, and then identify um, how you want to address those needs and expectations. For instance, your host community can be a relevant interested parties. Relevant interested parties are those people that what you do affect them, or what they do or decisions they take can affect you. So your employee, regulatory agencies, host community, the investors, the owners, the government agencies, host community, etc. They are your relevant interested parties. As long as your activities can impact on them, what they do can affect you, or what your decisions you take can affect them, or your activities can affect them, then of course they automatically become your relevant interested parties. So clause 4 is talking about understanding the context of the organization regarding internal and external issues. Clause 4 is also talking about understanding the needs and expectation of relevant interested parties. It's also talking about determining the scope, which is very, very critical. Every organization wants to implement the ISO 14001 2015. But in the implementation of the ISO 14001 2015, you will agree with me that there are boundaries. If I'm in the construction industry, even if there are two companies in the construction industry or two organizations within the same industry, you will agree with me that the scope of their processes or the scope of their activities would not exactly be the same thing. So you need to define the boundaries of your product and services. You need to define the boundaries of your applicability. Okay, we are in the oil and gas industry, but this is the scope of our operations. We are in the manufacturing sector. This is the scope of our operations. Even if we are manufacturing the same thing, the scope of our operation may not 100% be the same thing. So one of the key things that will help you to effectively manage your environmental management system is defining your boundaries, your applicability, the boundary of your operations, so that you can stay within the boundaries of your operations when you are managing your environmental issues. Then, of course, we talked about 4.4, which is just basically saying that you need to define those processes. You need to define those processes within your environmental management system, and how the processes within your environmental system interact with themselves, so that when they are interacting with themselves, they are able to give you the intended outcome. So for example, you have production, you have quality control, you have procurement, you have engineering, you have different aspects of the organization. How do they work together? How do they interact together? So you need to establish processes on how inputs becomes outputs, and how processes work together within an organization. How you establish, implement, maintain these processes will determine to a great extent the effectiveness of the interaction. How does procurement interact with production? How does production interact with quality control? How does quality control interact with engineering in terms of design? Do they have synergies? Otherwise, environmental resources may not be clearly defined according to the ISO standards. So this basically means that you come up with what we call internal SLAs, come up with policies and procedures, come up with objectives to say, okay, production regarding environment, these are your policies and processes. Engineering, no, just defining the different processes that will make up the environmental management system, their interactions and their interfaces, especially regarding how they manage environmental resources in order for you to enhance environmental performance. Okay, so I want to quickly run. So this is basically talking about a sample of how issues will look like, types of issues, categories of issues, meaning monitoring, means of monitoring of the issues. This is just a sample. It is generic. I mean, different organizations would definitely come up with their own different templates on how they want to manage their internal and external issues. Okay. Then, of course, you have analysis of your relevant interested parties. Again, this is just a generic template that tells you these are the list of our relevant interested parties. And then, of course, you want to look at the needs and expectations of these relevant interested parties. Who are the people that will be responsible to manage these needs and expectations, and what are the priorities? And of course, the table actually would extend to you monitoring monitoring this on a periodic basis. How do you want to monitor? Is it in a management review meeting? How do you want to ensure that this needs and expectation is being tracked? Who is responsible for tracking it? Some persons will say monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, whatever it is that you have determined. 4.3, and I think I've explained 4.3. Sorry, I have to really move a little bit faster. 4.3 is talking about scope of the environmental management system. And I stated earlier, it's talking about boundaries and applicability of the environmental management system. And in defining your scope, definitely you look at the activities, the product and services, and then you want to stay within the boundaries of your operations in defining your environmental management system. And it is very critical that scope is defined early. Otherwise, resources can be wasted here and there because you are not within your clearly defined boundaries. It is very, very important that we navigate within the scope of operation. Right. Okay. Can I go on? Can I go on? Just let me see in the chat. Just say yes, 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 yes in the chat, and I will go on. Yes, yes. Okay, yes, 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 yes. Fantastic. I can see all the yeses, all the yeses. Yes, 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 yes. Okay. All right, let's dive right in. So we talked about 4.3, which is scope, and I said it's important to remain within the boundaries. Then we want to talk about want to talk about clause 5. I want to talk about clause 5, which is very critical element. And like we all know, no management system, as it were, can actually demonstrate compliance or conformity to the requirement without leadership commitment. And I'm sure this is a topic or a subject that has been flogged time and time again, and we cannot overflog it actually, because accountability for the effectiveness of the management system rests within the purviews of the top management. And the standard is very clear on what the top management should be doing. It's saying that the top management, most importantly, must ensure that the resources needed for the management system are available. The top management must ensure that environmental policies are defined and environmental objectives are established. The top management must ensure that persons that are assigned responsibilities to carry out activities regarding the environment are competent on the basis of appropriate training, education, skills, knowledge, and all of that. Directing, supporting persons to contribute to ensure effectiveness of the management system, communicating and ensuring that policies, procedures, JDs, job descriptions are actually made, readily available. Defining hierarchies, not just only roles, responsibilities, also defining clear hierarchies and reporting lines so that persons will know who they are reporting to. In fact, they should form part of the onboarding process of any organization. And because the organization must ensure that the environmental management system is integrated into the overall business process of the organization. If it is integrated, then of course it becomes a strategic thing that is looked at not in isolation or in silos, but as part of the business process. As a consultant, sometimes you hear, oh, this is ISO document. Oh, this is the organizational document. Then we say to them that no, there's nothing like this is ISO document. No. For you to effectively navigate through the implementation of ISO, then the ISO requirement must be infused, must be integrated into the business process of the organization. And one of the key things that the organization will also, the top management of organization will also do is defining the environmental policy. The way you have safety policy, the way you have quality policy statement, there's a need to define an environmental policy statement that would drive the organization. And this basically is talking about the intention of the organization regarding how they want to control and direct their activities regarding quality management. It's very, very important. In fact, that's why most of the time when you see organizations that are either ISO certified or attempting to get ISO certified, one of the first documents you see either at the reception area or when you're trying to navigate through the organization is an environmental policy statement. It's a statement of intent. A statement of intent from the top management stating clearly this is what we want to achieve, okay? And it forms the framework and basis for the implementation of every other policies within the organization. And in defining your environmental policy statement, it must clearly contain commitments to how you want to manage your environmental resources, how you want to ensure compliance obligations, commitment to continual improvement, commitment to protection of the environment, commitment to pollution prevention, and several other commitments. And the environmental policy statements must be complete with all of these commitments in line with the ISO 14001-2015. I have seen several environmental policies that are incomplete. Why are they not incomplete? They are incomplete because they do not meet the requirements of the ISO standard. And that specifically is talking about ISO 14001 5.2 clause environmental policy. There must be clear commitment to how you want to protect the environment, how you want to prevent pollution, how you want to minimize the impact of your activities on the environment. It must clearly contain commitment to resource management, commitment to complying with applicable statutory and regulatory requirements. All of these commitments must be embedded in your in your environmental policy statement before you can say, yes, you have an environmental policy statement. And of course, the statement must be documented. It must be communicated. I have seen several statements that they'll just hang them around. Yes, hanging them also means communication. Yes, I won't disagree with that. But the standard is very specific to say that it needs to be communicated and understood. And person that it is communicated to must be able to demonstrate how they will contribute, to achieving the commitment that have been stated by the organization. Okay, so overall, the accountability, the overall accountability of any management system rests within the top management. So the top management can assign responsibilities, yes. Assigning responsibility is not the same thing as taking accountability for the outcome of that responsibility. You can assign responsibility to your leadership, your HODs, or your directors, but the overall accountability to the effectiveness of the system, whether it is positive or negative, it lies within the purview of the top management. So the overall accountability to the effectiveness of the management system lies with the top management, and their roles and responsibilities are as clearly spelled out in 5.1 particularly, and of course establishing the environmental policy, not just documenting it, communicating it, ensuring it is understood and it is applied within the organization, and most importantly, it is communicated to relevant interested parties. And then you want to ask me a question, how should we communicate to relevant interested party? What we usually would advise is the best way to communicate to your relevant interested party, just put it on your website. If you have a website, that's a fantastic way of communicating it to your relevant interested parties. Imagine you want to send memos to all your relevant interested party. How many persons do you want to send memos to? But putting it on your website is as good as saying it has been communicated to all the relevant interested parties. And of course, bring your onboarding process for your visitors and for contractors that you work with and other relevant interested parties you have identified. You also from time to time ensure that, yes, you go through that with them, okay? And that is really on the overview of clause 5, talking about leadership and commitments with specific focus on overall accountability, integrating the environmental management system into the business process. Now let's look at clause 6, which is my main clause. Why did I say it's the main clause? Because this is actually where you then begin to see the difference between the environmental management standard and all other standard, because basically clauses 4, 5 kind of generic somehow across some of the standards. Now looking at clause 6 specifically, the standard talks about planning, and it is very, very clear about planning or what to do. It's number 1, it talks about plan actions to address risks and opportunities. Risks and opportunities that will emanate as a result of those issues that you have identified in clause 4.1. Remember, we discussed the internal and external issues. those environmental conditions that can hinder you from actually, meeting your environmental performance or objectives. Those issues, like I said, can be issues related to waste, how you manage your waste, how you prevent pollutions. It could be issues related to host community issues. It could be issues related to how your environmental aspects are affecting people. So all those environmental aspects, which we are going to discuss right now, that you have identified, you need to address them as risk. The same way we do our safety risk management, you need to do a risk management, particularly of your environmental aspects and how you want to address most of these risks and opportunities. And when we say risk and opportunities, it's actually very intentional. Because the ISO standard says that as you are determining the risk and opportunity related to your environmental aspect, that opportunities can actually come as a result of risk. So risks are negative and opportunities are positive. Yes, it is possible that as you are trying to address risk emanating from your environmental aspect, you can actually discover opportunities that you did not even know existed within the system. Now, coming to an interesting concept, something very, really interesting, environmental aspects. The standard is very, very clear as to how we need to define environmental aspects. Say within the scope of your management system, that the organization needs to determine their environmental aspects. So now the question is, what are our environmental aspects? Now, environmental aspects are those things that we release. I'm going to just define in a very simple layman terminology. Those things that you release or you discharge into the environment as a result of what you do. Those things that you release to the environment, you discharge them to the environment as a result of your activities or as a result of interacting or as a result of providing services, products, services, manufacturing processes. Once that thing is released or discharged to the environment, it becomes your environmental aspects. Now, environmental aspects of your activities, products, or services can be gaseous, it can be liquid, it can be solid, it can be in any form. As long as it is as a result of your activity, once it comes out as a result of the fact that it is what you are doing or how you are interacting with the environment, then automatically it becomes your environmental aspect. But hold on. The question now I'm sure it will be going through your mind is, does it mean that every environmental aspect I release to the environment, I need to control? No. The standard now says that you need to control those ones that are significant. Now, as you are releasing, as you are discharging to the environment, you need to control those ones that would have environmental impacts. Now, as you release those things to the environment, it can be gaseous, it can be effluent, it can be solid waste. As you release them to the environment, they will have impact on the environment. Now, the impact that the environment will receive as a result of your environmental aspects will be dependent upon the significance of your environmental aspects. So the question is, the environmental aspects you're releasing, are they significant or not? How do you know that they are significant? How do you know that they are significant? So now let's take something as mundane as noise. So you go to a factory and then you're hearing the loud sounds of the machine and the operations, and the noise is being released left, right, and center. The question you want to ask yourself is, this noise that is released, is it significant? And on your own, you cannot just determine and say, oh, it is significant, or it is not significant. No, the standard says that significance is determined based on, number one, the organization's own environmental policies it has established. Most importantly, legal and regulatory requirements. Then it could also be contractual agreement between you and your client. For instance, the IFC standards or the World Bank standard, sustainability standards, or ESG metrics that you have agreed with your clients. So the standard says that for you to determine significance of your environmental aspects, you need to establish some criteria, environmental performance criteria, to monitor yourself. We have some clients that we deal with as consultants, and you notice that despite the fact that maybe WHO standard for noise is 85 decibel, or even NESTRA standard is even below, to say 82 or even 80, depending on where the noise is coming from. Sometimes you will see that the organization will say, no, for us, this noise is loud. This noise is actually very high. Can we make it 75? Can we make it 72? Based on their own internal environmental policies. So there could be environmental performance criteria or environmental performance matrix that needs to be clearly established. If organization does not have their own that is established, then organization need to establish those metrics based on using what we call statutory regulatory yardsticks. And those statutory regulatory yardstick will be a basis or benchmark for them to determine environmental aspect significance, because it is those significant aspects actually that the standard has mandated that we need to begin to put measures in place to bring them down to a level that will not significantly impact on the environment or negatively impact on the environment. And then, of course, the environmental aspects can actually be can actually come whether your operation is during normal operation, and it can also be during abnormal operations when there is a spill or something, or when there's an incident or something. Whatever conditions, whether normal operations or abnormal operations, you need to identify your environmental aspect. So, in other words, for you to identify environmental aspect, you then need to look at the key activities you carry out, or your key processes. Break down those processes into key activities. And as you are breaking them down into key activities, you are beginning to identify all the things, all the elements that are interacting with the environment as you are breaking them down. And then you are asking yourself, okay, in this grinding that we are doing, or in this particular process we are carrying out, or are we generating waste? Are we generating effluents? If we are generating effluent or wastewater, how do we dispose this wastewater? Do we just discharge them to the water bodies? Do we do an environmental analysis of the BODs and CODs to know the level of the oxygen inside, to be sure that it is within regulatory requirements? Then when you begin to answer this question, you are actually looking at your critical activities and those environmental aspects you are actually discharging to the environment. Because as long as you discharge environmental aspects, there will always be environmental impact, especially if those aspects are significant. And like I said, there are criteria that you need to use to determine whether those aspects are significant or they are not significant. And significant aspects can result into risk. Like I said earlier, significant aspects can result into risk, and then of course risk and opportunities. And those risk and opportunities, we need to carry out risk assessment in order to mitigate those adverse impacts on the environment. Okay, very, very important. Then compliance obligation is also talking about looking at all the regulatory and legal and statutory requirements, legal, statutory and regulatory requirements that you need to meet in order for you to claim that your organization is meeting the requirements of the environmental management system. So this compliance obligation basically is talking about determining how you want to, number one, have a list of all the, like we normally would say, legal register. Have a list of all the register, all the applicable statutory regulatory bodies that you must comply with for you to claim that yes, you are meeting the requirements based on environmental management system. Then of course you want to look at how do we assess this document, who is responsible for assessing them, how do we ensure that we have the most updated versions. And then under clause 8, under clause 9, that the standard is also talking about not just compliance obligation, it's also talking about evaluation of compliance obligation. It's one thing to have the list of all those legal registers in place, know who and who is responsible for getting them, have the updated versions. But the next question is, who is responsible for evaluating your obligation to this legal requirement? How do you track to ensure that, yes, this legal requirement, we are meeting the obligations as it were? Very important. Then you also have the environmental objectives. You cannot define environmental policies without having objectives to back them up. That's why the standard clearly stated that your environmental policy statements must serve as a framework or basis for the establishment of environmental objectives. So you need to have consistent environmental measurable environmental objectives that you can use to prove that you are actually meeting the requirements of the environmental management system. So your objective is saying, oh, we are going to prevent pollution, we are going to commit to the environment, we are going to ensure effective resource use of our raw materials. The next question is how? How do you want to prevent pollution? How do you want to prevent pollution? Okay, by ensuring that, okay, we don't discharge our effluent, your objective then begin to speak to how you want to control your wastewater. Your objective then begin to speak on how you want to reduce your waste. Your objective then begin to think of how you want to reduce your noise. Your objective then begin to look at how you want to, minimize those gaseous substances you're releasing, freely to the environment. Those are the aspects that you will now focus on in terms of your environmental objectives to be able to speak to your environmental policy. Remember, your environmental policy is a statement of commitment. So clause 6 talks about planning of your actions to address risk and opportunity as a result of your environmental aspects. And 6.2 is talking about environmental objectives and also actions to address them. And actions to address them, you would have basically something like, let me see, something like simple risk register like this, or yes, something like this. Good. This environmental monitoring program that speaks to what will need to be done, what resources you need, who will be responsible, when do you want to monitor? Is it annually, monthly, yearly? But most of the time, as a consultant, I don't advocate for yearly monitoring because that is too wide. I actually would advocate for monthly or quarterly monitoring so that you can be able to act if you are not within the environmental criteria that you have defined for yourself. So you can have a simple objective monitoring programs like this, that's individual. You have a committee that probably monitors it on a quarterly basis. Everybody submits their achievement, and then you track it and then look at it against your corporate environmental objectives. So you have a corporate environmental objective that is cascaded to individual processes within the organization. And this is actually helping you to, of course, navigate. And then remember, objective must be SMART. If it is not measurable, it is very difficult to monitor and know your level of achievement. One needs to be monitored. This is actually lifted directly from the ISO 14001. What will need to be what will be measured, what resources will be required, who will be responsible, when it will be completed. All of these were actually lifted, this particular slide, lifted from the standard so that you can see that the standard is very intentional about monitoring your environmental performance. And this is a sample of your risk and opportunity register. Of course, we are very familiar with this risk assessment matrix. That's a very popular one that majority of us we use regularly to do. I always love the quantitative risk assessment, not the qualitative one, because the quantitative one actually gives me a more objective kind of subjective overview of what the risk looks like. Okay, Walu, can I continue? Let's quickly run to clause 7.
Yes, ma, you can go ahead, ma. You can go ahead, ma.
Okay. All right, let's continue. So let's look at clause 7. And clause 7 is the support activities that you typically will have in most organizations. The operation is the core activities or core product and services that we deliver to our clients. But the support is actually those aspects of the processes that actually will give a platform to the core processes. So when you talk about support, the first thing that the standard talks about under support is resources. And of course, we know that when the standard talks about support, the key thing is talking about, when the standard talks about support, the key thing is talking about is the human element of implementation of the standard. And it talks about that the persons that are going to be used to navigate through the implementation of the environmental management system must be adequate, not just adequate, and they must also be competent, having the human resources, the financial resources, the infrastructural resources, and all of those resources that are required to effectively implement the environmental management system. Now, it's not just enough to have these persons in place. The standard says that the persons must be competent. And I always like to use the word SCATE, and I'm sure some of you already know this acronym, SCATE, which means having the required skills, knowledge, attitude, training, experience, or education. So when the standard talks about the person must be competent, it means you must have the appropriate skills, knowledge, attitude, training, and experience or education, if you like to call that. Okay, so having the right persons, having them to have the right competence is also very important. And if they don't have the right competence, the standard actually advised that we determine the training needs or the gaps that they have, and then we need to train. And after training, we need to do training evaluation. Training evaluation is not the one that you say, oh, the facilitator spoke good English. No, the ambience was okay. The jollof rice they served was very interesting. Yes, those things are part of the evaluation. But the evaluation, the standard is talking about here, is on the job evaluation, where your supervisor evaluates that those gaps that were identified have actually been fulfilled when you went through those training. Those training must address some specific training needs to actually achieve competence, competency of the required person. So determining the training needs, providing the training, and evaluating the effectiveness of the training to be sure that those gaps that were identified, they were actually appropriately addressed. Otherwise, then we have not actually fulfilled the requirement of the ISO 14001-2015 standard. Of course, awareness. Awareness of what? Three things. The standard is very specific about awareness of the environmental policies, awareness of the objectives and environmental objectives, and then, of course, awareness of the significant environmental aspects and how they affect your work, and then, of course, how you would contribute to ensuring that the organization meets the requirements of the environmental policy the environmental management system rather. So providing awareness is one of the key elements under support, and awareness on environmental policy and objectives, awareness of the significant environmental aspect, and awareness on how you contribute to the effectiveness of the environmental management system. And this is basically talking about induction or the onboarding process. It had to be part of the onboarding process where everyone understands and they are on the same page, not some group of persons within the organization. They know that we are implementing ISO, while the other persons within the organization, they are not even aware of what is going on. Then you don't have a holistic system that really speaks to your to effectiveness of your ISO management system. So we need to have a holistic system. And a holistic system means that everyone within the system actually understands, both contractors, in fact, all relevant stakeholders. That's what the standard use, all relevant stakeholders. Then you have communication, both the internal and external communication. What needs to be communicated, who will need to communicate, especially the external communication. Who are the external parties we are going to be communicating with in case we have environmental emergency, there's a spill, there's a structural collapse, there's an oil, there's a gas explosion, one environmental emergency is there. How do we navigate through? Who are those persons that we need to communicate to, and who will be responsible for communicating? So in other words, organization need to come up with a policy for internal and external communication, right? Then of course we have Clause 5, which has to do with documented information. This is basically talking about the policies, the procedures that you have in place to show evidence of your compliance with the requirement. And this has to do with, your size, your complexity of your processes, the type of product and services you render. Remember in 4.4, environmental management system and its processes, I was speaking about how the processes interact together. And of course, it is your documented processes that will actually also show how you are all interacting and interfacing with each other within an organization, how processes are interacting and interfacing together. And then of course, you come to clause 8, which is the operations. Okay, see, this is this is an overview of clause. So you have clause 8, which is the operations. And for me, For me, clause 8 actually is the heartbeat of the environmental management system. Why did I say it is the heartbeat of the environmental management system? Now recall that you are going to be identifying risk. You are going to be identifying environmental aspects. You are going to be talking about environmental impacts. Now, when you identify environmental risk, you need to come up with policies and procedures on how, or controls, or what we call operational controls on how those environmental aspects will be controlled or will be minimized. All those operational policies and procedures that you put in place, they are actually captured under clause 8, establishing operational criteria on how you can manage your pollution, on how you can manage your waste, on how you receive your raw materials, on how you mobilize contractors, on how you procure your equipment, your raw materials. What are the safety data information that you need? What are the critical aspects? What are the impacts of your raw material? All of those information, you need to establish controls. And when I say controls, don't let it sound so big. It basically means define policies, procedures, have a system in place on how you should navigate through. Persons that are handling these activities should know what to do and how to do them. So basically, controls can include like different aspects of controls, administrative controls, elimination options, different aspects of our controls and all those policies and procedures that we want to define in ensuring that we actually operate within the environmental objectives that we have defined for ourselves. So organization needs to establish that processes or procedures on how they want to maintain environmental management system effectiveness by defining all of these elements and making sure that even your contractors, they will be part of this operational control and planning and controls, so that we are sure that whatever contractors we are bringing in are also in alignment with the requirements of our environmental management system. Okay, all of this are talking about operational planning and control. Then you have 8.2, environmental emergency preparedness and response. What are the potential? And I always like to use the word potential. Potential, it is always good to identify all the potential emergencies, likely emergency. Now, they may not happen, because the only one that we always identify most of the time are oil spills, maybe most of the time structure collapse. Sometimes it could be things related to gas explosion, and then we limit it to that. No, we need to go through our processes critically and come up with a list of all the potential emergencies, just like the same way we identify potential emergencies in ISO 45001 2018. But most of the time, when you go to most organizations, the only emergency that they have identified is just fire, fire, fire. There are several other potential emergencies beyond just fire. Now, you now have to have a procedure on how to respond to this actual potential and actual emergency. Of course, you need to periodically test these plans that you have in place or procedure to be sure that it will be effective. Periodically review what you have put in place to be sure that your response plan would actually be effective in case of actual emergency. Like they say, that it is not on the day of war that you prepare for war. And that's why it is very important that you test whatever emergency processes or procedures, policies and procedures you have defined for yourself to be sure that you are prepared and that everyone within the organization are adequately equipped to ensure that they are able to navigate effectively through whatever emergency, environmental emergency situation that may arise in your operation. Then, of course, you have clause 9. Remember, we said that at the beginning that the ISO standard works on the concept of PDCA. And we say PDCA represents plan, do, check, and act. Plan, do, check, and act. Now, we've talked about planning, which is majorly clauses 4, 5, 6, planning, and 7. When we talked about operations, which is the doing clause 7 and 8, doing clause in the environment. Now, you have done what you say you would do, then you need to monitor and measure your performance. What you don't monitor, what you don't measure, you can't improve. Can I say that again? What you don't monitor, what you don't measure, you can't improve upon. So you need to sit back, then monitor yourself to say, okay, where are we in this program? How far have we gone? How well did we do? And that is where you fall back to your performance, your environmental performance matrix that you have defined for yourself earlier. So you are monitoring your environmental performance matrix in terms of the environmental aspects and the impact, environmental risk. You're monitoring your contractors, you're monitoring your staff performance. You're looking at all of those metrics within the system to be sure that, yes, even your evaluation of compliance, yes, all those lists of statutory, regulatory, compliance obligation, all those lists that you were able to create to say, oh, we are going to comply with all of these environmental, Ministry of Environment, NESTRA laws, all of those laws that you have listed out that you are going to comply with. You want to also confirm that, yes, you are meeting that. You want to confirm that, yes, all of this, you are meeting them. And that is why 9.1.2 is very critical, which is talking about evaluation of compliance, especially to statutory regulatory requirements. Okay, you need to establish procedures to evaluate whether you have actually met your compliance obligations. And compliance obligations means basically all those statutory regulatory. What is the frequency of your evaluation? Who is responsible for evaluating as per meeting the requirements of NESTRA that are specific, because not all the requirements of NESTRA that will be specific to you. Those ones that are specific to us, how far have we gone? Have we been able to meet them? Who is responsible for even meeting them? What department have you assigned some key elements of this? So basically what you do in practically is looking at all those obligations and then looking at the various departments or processes that will be responsible for evaluating compliance, and then from time to time, either monthly or quarterly basis, then you sit down, look at those elements, and the organization sits down, look at those elements, and then be able to assess themselves to say, oh, okay, we were able to achieve, or we're not able to achieve. And then you ask yourself, why were we not able to achieve? You go back to the drawing board to look at those areas that you need to achieve continual improvement. Another very good tool for performance evaluation is your internal audits. Very, very good. Beautiful tool for monitoring. So you need to establish an annual internal audit program. From there, you define your audit criteria. Of course, you train your auditors that will carry out, or you can even bring in external auditor to assess you, whichever for pre-assessment, whichever one you want to do. But you need to, from time to time, to evaluate yourself using internal audit tool as one of your measurement elements. Very important. 9.3, you have management review. Okay, this is a mandatory review. It's mandated by the ISO standard that periodically the top management of the organization, they need to sit together, look at the processes that they have established, and then of course ask themselves some critical questions. And interestingly, the standard gives you the minimum input into that meeting. It said asks you to all those elements you have looked at, especially when it comes to implementation of those internal and external issues, your environmental aspects, the significant, let me use the word, significant environmental aspects, the risk and opportunities, your objectives, all of those elements. The standard says you need to sit down as a top management of your organization. It's their responsibility to sit down, look at all those elements. Have we fulfilled our obligations in terms of legal requirements, the result of the internal audit, how did we fare, adequacy of resources do we have, so many other parameters. It is clearly listed in 9.3 that you need to look at to really evaluate yourself. Then the outcome, and this is very critical, the outcome of the management review, you need to then assign responsibilities and resources and take decisions as to when those things, those elements, or those exceptions, or those gaps needs to close out so that your organization can actually begin to improve. And that takes us to plus 10, which is what? Improvement. It is now the decisions that you have taken from the inputs of your management review The output of management review is very critical. Then you now put that you will infuse into clause 10. And what is clause 10? Clause 10 is talking about improvement. Two things, and I think I've said it earlier. Either you are getting it right and what you are doing is okay, then you continue to improve on it. And that is where the element of continual improvement comes in. What organization needs to do to continually improve the suitability, effectiveness, adequacy of its management system. You cannot say, oh, we have improved and we need to relax. No. The largest room in the world is that room called what? Improvement. Then you need to continually improve. However, from your performance evaluation in clause 9, peradventure, or perhaps that you did not achieve what you're supposed to achieve, what you then do is go back to the drawing board, and that is where you have non-conformity and corrective action. And it is very important that you take correction and corrective action, which is very, very important. Okay, very, very important. So it is very, very important that you take corrective action. Can I just ask this question? What's different between correction and corrective action? Correction, corrective action. What's the difference? Can you just put it in the chat? Let someone speak to me. Correction, corrective action. What's the difference? So standard is very clear to say when you identify non-conformities, and non-conformities are non-fulfillment of the requirements or exceptions you didn't achieve or you didn't fulfill what you set out to achieve or fulfill. Then you need to take correction and corrective action. What is the difference between correction, corrective action? Somebody says, okay, corrective action taken to make corrections. Correction is what is corrected. Okay. Yes. Some more suggestions, please. Correction, corrective action. What's the difference? Yeah, please put it in the chat. Let's talk. Put it in the chat. Correction, corrective action. Correction, corrective action. Okay. Correction, immediate action taken. Okay, corrective action taken to forestall a reoccurrence. Beautiful. But before you can take action to forestall a reoccurrence, there must be something you must do. There's one very critical thing you need to do. Corrections are the ones you close out immediately, while corrective action is a plan you have to close out observation. Correction are the solution, and corrective action is acting upon the identified problem. Okay, corrective action are what to do. Why correction is a completed action? Correction is the immediate action to address the NC, yes. Why corrective action is action to address the root cause. You nailed it, Francis. Thank you. That's the word I've been looking for. Action taken to address the root cause of a problem. Christopher, thank you. Action taken to address the root cause of a problem to prevent a reoccurrence. Thank you, Aziz. Correction is immediate action taken, while corrective action are set of procedures to address the non-conformity. But what are the set of procedures, right? So corrective action involves root cause analysis. Absolutely, Temi Dayo. Correction is more like correcting a problem or righting a wrong, yes. While corrective action is action taken to correct the cause or the root cause of the problem. Absolutely. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Correction has to do with line. Sorry, I can't get this very well. Correction is action taken to forestall a reoccurrence. Yes, 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 yes. And then, okay, so basically, correction is action taken to right a wrong, while corrective action is action taken to address the root cause of a problem to prevent a reoccurrence. So I usually would like to give this analogy most of my training. You saw a pool of water on the floor, right? And then you call a cleaner to say, hey, cleaner, come mop up this water. The cleaner comes to mop up the water. The next morning you come back again, you still see the pool of water. You call the cleaner again to mop up the water. The cleaner mops up the water. And then you have a repeat again the third day. So what you have been doing all along is just correction, righting a wrong. You are not addressing the source of that problem. You are not addressing the root, and that is why it is reoccurring. So when you want to address a problem, you look at the cause of the problem, the root cause analysis. Of course, there are different tools that you can use for your root cause analysis. We have the 5 why analysis, we have the taproot analysis, we have the root cause analysis, the bow tie analysis, but most important thing is identifying the root cause. Because if you don't identify why that pool of water is on the floor, maybe the roof is leaking or there's a leakage somewhere, you will not be able to address the root cause of the problem to prevent a reoccurrence. Otherwise, it will keep reoccurring. Why preventive action is the action taken to prevent, to stop a potential non-conformity from happening. It has the potential to happen, it has not happened. And you want to put in place a measure, like the preventive maintenance you carry out is for preventive, to prevent the maybe your ACs or your car from breaking down. Those routine maintenance you put in place are actually preventive. But corrective action, it has gone wrong. Something has happened. It has broken down, but then you want to stop it from reoccurring. And I think this is a very good place to stop right now. And I will take some comments and observation, and we can call it a day. I'm sure I have actually exceeded Waliu's time. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Can we take some questions, and then, of course, comments, observation? Yes, thank you. Correction refers to an immediate action taken to rectify a non-conformity and identify problem. Corrective action, on the other hand, goes beyond mere correction and involves a systematic approach, absolutely, to eliminate the cause of the problem. Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. Yes. Okay. Preventive action is no longer in the ISO standard right now. Yes, Frances. Preventive action. So the word preventive action in the ISO, in this new current ISO, has been replaced with risk-based thinking. So what you will see is risk and opportunity. So the word preventive action does no longer, you won't see it in this current ISO. In fact, starting from the ISO from 2015 to date, you will not see the word preventive action, especially in the 14,001, 19,001, 45,001. You won't see preventive action. However, what you will see is risk-based thinking, or you will see risk and opportunities. Is there a recommended period of doing what? Okay, so I think that Wali will just gather the questions together and take it. Thank you. Can we look at the clauses and subclauses and determine where they belong to in the PDCA? Okay. Now, in the PDCA for the ISO 9001, you have the clauses. The planning clauses are usually within clauses 4, 5, 6, 7. They are the planning clauses. We consider clause 8 as the do clause. Clause 8 is the do. Clause 9 is the check. And clause 10 is your act. That's your act. Most of the time, you will see the do is under clause 8. That's the operations. And you see clause 9, performance evaluation, which is monitoring and measurement. That is check. Performance evaluation. And then you see acts as your clause 10. And why we say acts is because if there is something that you didn't get right, you want to take correction and corrective action. Yes. Okay, why do you want to gather the questions so that we can go through them? What's different between risk and opportunities? And I think I stated that. Now, risk in ISO terminology, risk are those things that are negative. They are things that can negatively impact you. Now, opportunities are things that would enhance your system. Okay, so for example, low competence among the staff, because using a staff that is not competent is a risk in itself. It's a risk to the system. Having staff that are not trained, that are not competent, is a risk. Now, as a result of training them, you could actually derive opportunities there in the sense that they can become now more competent and become knowledgeable, have so much knowledge, and they can begin to train others and become trainers within your organization. And I've actually seen that happen. So sometimes you have, you see ISO standard says that when risk is positive, it is called opportunities, and when risk are negative, they are actually negative and they are risks. Risk is risk actually, but then again, ISO standard stated that when risk is negative, it is risk, And when risk is positive, it is an opportunity. In the pharmaceutical industry, we make use of CAPA, that is corrective action, preventive action. No, it is not obsolete. One thing again that I love so much about the ISO standard is it is generic. The ISO standard would tell you what to do, but it won't tell you how to do it. It is very open-ended. And so if using CAPA within the pharmaceutical industry suits you and helps you to actually navigate through identifying effective corrective action and preventive action, why not? Go ahead and use it. Now, there's a particular recommendation I want to make. If you can lay your hands on ISO 14001 2015 standard, this standard we are talking about, there's a place they call Annex informative section at the back of the standard. It is called Annex informative section. Please read through that portion of the ISO 14001 2015. It is informative Annex. Beautiful. Read through it. If you read through it, it will give you an overview of how to implement all the requirements of the ISO. In fact, under it, you will see guidance on how to implement the requirements. Guidance on how to implement the requirement. You will see that it will tell you that organization can use other methods that are not mentioned in the standard as long as that method is working for them and as long as it's a standardized method. So yes, you can use CAPA. It is actually very acceptable. What difference between a record and a document? Now, even though ISO standard has stopped using the word record and document, it uses documented information. Record is something that provides evidence that work has been performed. And records are always historic, something you store away to provide evidence that you have performed your work. Whereas documents are things that show how to do your work. So documents are information and it's supporting medium. I'm just defining based on ISO definition. Documents are information and it's supporting medium. Now, documents are living and we normally say records are dead. We normally say records are dead because you store them away for historic purposes. You want to refer to them, to provide evidence that you have performed this work. For example, your reports, your minutes of meetings, your reports generally that you give, those are records. They are historic. They provide evidence to show that you have performed your work. And sometimes they are basis for your objective evidence or for your performance assessment. So your boss wants to assess you. It is those records you have submitted over a period of time that you will use to assess you. However, documents are just information and it's supporting medium. And examples of documents can be your standard operating procedures, your quality manual, your environmental manuals, your policies, procedures that you have in place. And we say documents are living because they can be reversed, they can be updated, they can be, so you can have version 1, version 2 tomorrow. However, document it if you update or you change the minutes of meeting without authorization, you are actually making the records not be authentic anymore. So that's the basic difference between a record and a document. I hope that answers your question. Could you share some light on the usage of this word conformance and compliance? Fantastic. So conformance, you conform to standards and you comply to statutory regulatory requirements. So legal requirements, you comply to them, while conformance to a standard. So for example, in ISO standard, you will see conformity assessments because the ISO standard requirement is for you to conform to the requirements. And most of the time, conformance are usually non-obligatory, but compliance, usually legal compliance, most of the time it is mandatory rather. It's mandatory. So you use compliance for legal requirements, for legal obligations, while you use conformity for standards like ISO standard. That's why you say, if you don't conform to the ISO standard, they will say it's a non-conformity. What is non-conformity? It means non-fulfillment of a requirement such as maybe ISO standard. Sorry that I joined late at clause 5, but please can we get a recap of the clauses 1 to 4? That will be Waliu.
Please kindly ignore that. Well, it's recorded and it's on YouTube already, so they can have
all right. Okay, please help me understand the difference between impact and aspect register and the environmental risk register. Okay, aspects are all those things that you release or discharge. So before you can even have an impact register, the first register you must have is your environmental aspect register. If you don't have an environmental aspect register, you don't have a business having an environmental impact register. Now, when you have what we call the environmental aspect register, basically what it does is that you list out all the active processes. So you read that production. Let me just give an example. Engineering production, for example, you list out all the activities carried out under production. And then under production, you want to ask yourself, what do we do? Okay, we manufacture plastics, for example. In manufacturing plastics, we do grinding. And in grinding, what are the things that we release to the environment? Solid waste, plastic waste, yes. So this plastic waste we release to the environment. How do we manage it? It automatically becomes your environmental aspects. Anything you release or you discharge to the environment, it can be solid, it can be liquid, it can be gaseous, becomes your environmental aspects, right? Now, those environmental aspects is not all of it that you want to address because resources are limited. And honestly, even if you tried, trust me, you won't be able to. And that's why the standard says that, look, you need to address those ones that are significant. And those ones that are significant, you have identified. For example, let me use noise again, because it is one of the easiest, environmental aspects that you see. Then you look at your noise and you say, oh, our noise, you have to capture it. You have to, of course, measure it. It's not something you just do arbitrarily. You then ask yourself, this noise that we are releasing to the environment or we are releasing within the factory, is it significant? How do you determine that? Using benchmarks, right? And I say you can use statutory regulatory requirement, WHO standard, NESRA standard, Ministry of Environment standard. If you're in Lagos, LASEPA, if you're in Ogun State, August, you look at statutory regulatory requirements, right? Then you now begin to ask yourself, this noise, and of course, some people will get an environmental management report, which is very, very beautiful. Why? Because an environmental audit report will actually help you to know those environmental aspects that are significant. Then when you have those aspects that are significant, then you now begin to look at environmental impacts as a result of those your significant aspects, right? Then you now begin to put in place controls. Now, your environmental aspects that are significant could also lead to risk. Now, what is the risk of noise as a result of your environmental aspect that is significant? Loss of hearing and all of that. So you see that as a result of that environmental aspect that is significant, you have determined the environmental impacts, and you have also determined the environmental risk, right? Or it can also be solid, it can be liquid, it can be effluent. For example, if it is effluent, you want to release the effluent to the water bodies, right? Then the question you want to ask yourself, what is the constituent of that effluent we are releasing? Is it significant? When we do the analysis, does it meet statutory regulatory requirements? If it does not, if we release it, that means we are impacting negatively on the environment. Remember, the water bodies contains fishes and all of that. So you are impacting negatively and all of, so you want to check that. Right, Ma, can we get a link to performance standard course of, yeah, the link. Okay, someone shared it on LinkedIn actually. So just go to World Bank, go to World Bank sites. I don't have the link right now. Maybe I can share it with Walu later on. I don't know how you'll be able to share that. I do not readily have the link. Let me see. I think they sent me a certificate. Let me get you the specific topic so that you can go search for that course. Yes, it is a course I will recommend. It's a very good course. You will enjoy it. And it talks about the 8 performance standard Let me see if I can get that, my certificate. It is talking about environmental monitoring and performance. I can't find it. They just sent me certificates last week. Yeah, I would like to share. Yes, I would like to share the link, but just go to the World Bank site and look for the IF for a corporate entity that subscribes to one of these sustainability frameworks. How would the entity align its ESG strategies with ISO 41000? Yes, okay, so is your sustainability framework actually that you want to align to the ISO 14001? If you were listening at the beginning, I said one of the out of the 8 frameworks, almost like 4 or 3, let's say 3 or 4 of it specifically is speaking about environment and environmental sustainability. So invariably, implementing ISO 14001 will actually help you to address some of those environmental issues that have been highlighted in that IFC standard. So the IFC environmental standard is saying that for you to be able to demonstrate that, yes, you are actually meeting the requirements and everything, they want to see resource efficiency and pollution prevention. Now, remember that ISO 14001, in implementation of ISO 14001, one of the things you want to look at is environmental pollution. What are the releases to the environment? So by the time you look at environmental pollution, for example, you want to manage how you release those pollutions to the air and how you control those pollution. You are invariably answering the IFC standard. You are invariably answering that. Then resource management, consumption of energy, consumption of your electricity. How do you ensure that you minimize consumption of electricity? Water. How do you ensure? What do you have policies on how you manage your papers? Do you have policies on how you manage energy consumption? What are other alternative energy uses? We have so many clients that have gone to gas. We have so many clients that use solar system. All of this you are trying to do so that you can minimize how much energy you consume in terms of depletion of natural resources and efficient use of resources. How do you measure and how do you monitor your resource efficiencies? When you are using gas, how are you able to consume? How are you able to monitor? In fact, as they supply gas to you, we have some clients that they have metrics that they use to monitor the quantity that they supply them, how they consume this month, and how they are able to do trend analysis to track their consumption and all of that. So by the time you're addressing some of these environmental aspects that are significant, you are invariably addressing the IFC standard on performance standard on clause 3, which is resource efficiency, which is efficient resource use and pollution prevention. Okay, I hope I've tried to answer the questions I see. Would you want to speak about the life cycle analysis and the aspect of the standard that is reinforcing this? Okay, so one of the aspects of the standard that is reinforcing life cycle management is also this is the biodiversity conservation and sustainability management of living natural resources. And of course, please, one thing again you must know, when I was taking this course and they emphasize it very well, is that it is not one IFC standard or one particular matrix that you can meet to say, oh, you have fulfilled this requirement. There are a lot of other analysis that you probably would do beyond this that will show that, yes, you are meeting it. So specifically to the life cycle analysis and the aspect of the standard that actually addresses this is number 3 and number 6. Biodiversity conservation, sustainable management of living natural resources, and efficient resource use and pollution prevention. Those two are those ones that actually are addressing life cycle analysis. And remember in the presentation, I said that the current school of thought right now is that life cycle analysis should be from cradle to cradle and no longer cradle to grave. Before cradle to grave is when you have the last thing that you consider to be waste. The next thing you want to do is to dispose. But right now you're no longer looking at disposal. You're looking at how to take back that thing that seemingly look like waste, to try to convert it back or recycle it back or reuse it. Or if you cannot recycle or reuse it, you can recover it, or it can become raw material for another industry that is not even entirely under your industry. All right, I think at this point I need to stop. Thank you so much, everybody, for your contributions. Thank you for waiting and for listening. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Waliu. Thank you so much. I'll just stop hearing.
You have done, I don't even know how to qualify this or how to, I don't know, I'm speechless. I'm just speechless. Words alone
Thank you,
cannot
Waliu.
appreciate how is not enough to appreciate you for what you've done for us today. This is really, really in-depth. A 5 days course, a 4 days course has been scrambled together effectively and efficiently in 2 hours. This is wonderful. Please let us see the comment section. Let us appreciate our mother in health and safety and quality and environment, because this is wonderful. Thank you so much, man. We really appreciate you. You've not only done justice to the topic, you also did justice to all the questions. And I'm very sure that a whole lot of us here has really learned today. We've learned a whole lot. Myself, I've learned a lot today, and every other person here has gained so much knowledge from you. Thank you so much. It's really wonderful having you. Thank God we finally had you. I think this will be the second time, if I'm not mistaken, that you've joined our call, that you responded to us. We really appreciate you so much, man. Thank you so much, and we will continue to learn from you. We are behind you. Anywhere you are presenting, we are following you to come and learn from you. Thank you so much once again. and I believe that everyone here is also ringing the same tone. Thank you, everyone who has joined us today. Thank you for your patience. Even though you could have used your time for every other thing, without you, this would have been impossible. Imagine having our powerful speaker here and myself, and there's nobody here to listen. It will just it will be such a waste of time. Thank you all for making this relevant. Thank you all for making this important, and we hope to see you once again. I can see so many people on the call. In fact, this is the first time in a long time. I think this year, actually, I don't know. This is the first time in a long time that I'll be having close to 96 persons on the call at a go. It has always been 80, 70. Well, it's not about the number, but it shows the significance of the speaker that is talking and the importance of the topic and how the series has gone so far. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for making this possible. This is a wonderful community. I can see so many of us here already. I can see Onifade from Lai. I can see Mr. Eric Okpong, my friend from Ghana. I can see Molina. I can see Mr. Alfred Ajao. I saw Mr. Fregene the other time. Congratulations on your new appointment, sir. I can see me, Engineer Sylvester. I can't keep calling him. I saw Engineer Timothy Aluko the other time. I saw Engineer Tuku Lawal. I'm seeing Mukhtar Hakim, Mary Peter, so many of us, all the engineers on the house, Engineer Huzo, so many people, in fact, even till now. Please, thank you so much.
Waliu. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening in. Thank you so much, everyone.
So please kindly unmute and let's appreciate our speaker. You can unmute now and say thank you to ourselves.
Thank you very much.
Many thanks to you, man.
Thank you.
Thank
you so much. Thank you so much, man. Thank you for well delivery program.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, madam. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Monica.
Thank you.
God bless you. God bless you all. Thank you so much,
you
everyone,
so
for your
much,
contribution. Thank you. Thank you so much for. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been wonderful. And thank you for all your questions. Actually made it more interesting. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. And Waliu, thank you so much for this opportunity. And thank you for all that you are doing. You are also highly appreciated. God bless everyone. Thank you. Have a wonderful week ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, in case you missed any of the any part, you came later, you go on our YouTube channel, you will see it there on the YouTube. It's live on YouTube. You can watch it later, rewatch, and learn. And don't forget to also share to people around you to also learn. Remember, it is always very important to improve in our competency level, and that is why we keep doing this continuously. Hopefully, next week we will have another wonderful series. If not, maybe the upper week, definitely we will have another wonderful series. Thank you all once again. We really appreciate you. Do enjoy the new week.
Thank you, all you love. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.